We start from Parliament, and minority in Parliament led by former Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, Dr. Antonia Kutuose, says rather than slashing the salaries of the executive arm of government by some 10%, the President should ensure all his appointees and top public officials pay their own utility bills. Though the President has already directed the installation of prepaid meters at government bungalows, the ranking member says the directive must be broader, adding that the President must also ensure compliance and not mere lip service. Dr. Kutuose was making initial submissions ahead of the start of the full debate on the 2014 budget statement as presented to Parliament by the Finance Minister last week.
The ranking member's comments were in response to remarks by the chairman of the Finance Committee while seconding the motion for the approval of the 2014 budget.
Government also plans to widen the tax nets, also to undertake direct tax audits, intensify custom post-clearance reconciliation, and also intensify the VAT reconciliation and payroll tax auditing to ensure that uncollected taxes are recovered.
But the ranking member argued increases in taxes by government as announced in the budget defeats the social democratic ideals of the National Democratic Congress.
So if the President wants to do a symbolism, I'm offering him this suggestion. Don't cut their salaries by 10%. In fact, they have not done anything to deserve this punishment. Increase their salary by the amount that you negotiate with labor, if it's 10 or 11, so you keep them apart. But direct that from today, anybody that gets free utility must begin to pay. It is more fair and equitable. Mr. Speaker, then the executive will feel the 59% increase just like me and all Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, let them pay.
On the revenue projected by government in the 2014 budget, Dr. Kutuose intimated that government failed to reach its 2013 projection of 12 billion Ghana cedis and demanded the minister furnish the House with a justification for payments made to Suba Info Solutions, the company cited in a controversial contract with the Ghana Revenue Authority. Member of Parliament for Ketu South, Fifi Kwete, who attempted a justification of the economy's performance, was challenged by Dr. Kutuose to provide evidence.
50% of that overrun was accounted for by wages and salaries. 50%. The overrun stood at 4 billion, Mr. Speaker, and the wages and salary component alone took 1.9 billion. That's about half of it accounted for by single spine, and that's verifiable.
The wage overrun was 1.97 billion. The deficit, listen, the deficit was 8.7 billion. 1.97 divided by 8.7 is not 50%. He said the wage was 50%. It's false. This is propaganda.
A member of the Finance Committee, Mark Osesibe, said having failed in all its 2013 projections, he wondered why government's 2014 targets should be taken any seriously.
Mr. Speaker, is it the case that the econometric methodology of estimating targets is flawed? Or is it much ado about nothing when these budgets are presented?
Meanwhile, the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament has started work on the proposed increases in fees and charges. Joy News has learned the committee in the report, which is yet to be laid, is recommending an annual review of the fees and charges rather than the quantum leap after several years as provided for in the Financial Administration Regulation. This, the committee noted, will make increases more bearable for patrons of government services. In this respect, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, which attempted to charge new fees some time back, including some major hospitals and government departments and agencies, will soon be given the legal mandate to increase their fees and charges periodically. Emmanuel Ante, Joy News, Parliament.
Visiting South African President Jacob Zuma has described Ghana as an excellent institution of democracy on the continent. Addressing a joint news conference with President John Mahama, President Zuma announced that Ghana would continually be duly recognized as an event slated for South Africa next year. The two countries have also signed 3 bilateral agreements to improve cooperations.
The leaders signed a bilateral air service agreement
Well, we apologize for those freezing pictures. We'll try as much as possible to bring you back that very story. Meanwhile, Ghana has signed a memorandum of understanding with South Africa to ensure quality standards in trading between the two countries. And the move will also allow the two countries to share capacity in testing the standards of commodities moving in and out of both countries, and also facilitate a speedy trading process.
After signing 3 bilateral trade agreements earlier, the MOU to ensure standards only aims at making trade relations between the two countries easier.
It will facilitate in terms of speed, like when South Africa products are here, right? The way we go about it with other people will be faster. That is what we want to, so that to boost up trade. Because the volumes of trade that is going on all over the world is very, very colossal. So if you have the standards, and we have what we call accreditation laboratories. So if South Africa has an accredited laboratory and produce are coming, they just check them, and as it comes here, we have what we call conformity of analysis or conformity of certification of conformity. And when we have those things, it means that the things that are coming from South Africa, they are of good quality, they are safe.
Please come and collect your...
It makes things easier for us and for South Africa.
For South Africa, the MOU will ensure products from their country are accepted in Ghana. They also plan to share capacity with Ghana to ensure standards are met.
Ghana wants to sell more cocoa in South Africa. If they have challenges with regulatory regimes and the standards in South Africa, the MOU says we will assist with it and make sure that we harmonize the standards and facilitate the testing of the product if it's necessary, and make sure that the product is acceptable in the respective markets. And the same in South Africa. We have products that we would like to expand in our exports on into Ghana, and obviously we want to be able to use the standards relationship to make sure that those companies, the South African companies, don't find it difficult to service Ghana, but also to protect the integrity of the relationship by making sure that the companies in South Africa that meet certain standards, they don't come to Ghana and change those standards.
Visiting South African President Jacob Zuma has described Ghana as an excellent institution of democracy on the continent. Addressing the joint news conference with President Mahama, President Zuma announced that the country will be due recognized as an event slated for South Africa next year. The two countries have also signed 3 bilateral agreements to improve cooperation.
The leaders signed a bilateral air service agreement, memorandum of understanding on cooperation on transport-related matters, and memorandum of understanding on cooperation on electricity. President Jacob Zuma was full of praise for Ghana's democracy and announced that the country has been chosen to receive an African Peace Award.
Our second, if we take the history of Ghana, as one of the first countries that fought and succeeded against independence. And it did not end there. It took a very clear, bold stand that if Ghana was free and the rest of the African continent was not free, it was not free.
President John Mahama asked his South African counterpart to use the comparative advantage they have in trade to help push the continent's integration. The two leaders then answered some questions from journalists.
I must say yes, we've been grappling with a deficit from last year, higher than expected, 12%, and we had targeted to reduce that to 9% this year. We haven't hit the target. We are estimating that will hit between 10 and 10.2%, but that is a progress. At least the deficit is moving in the right direction. That is going down.
Well, the first question was, will South Africa advise Ghana the same? No, we don't tell one another in the continent, do this because I'm doing this in my country.
The South African president had earlier visited the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum and Asomdwe Park the final resting place of the late President Mills and laid wreaths on the tombs of the two late presidents.
Policy think tank St. Ghana has released research it says points to gross financial misappropriation in the disbursement of the District Assembly Common Fund. The research also cited limited transparency and accountability in the mobilization of internally generated funds by various MMDAs. The think tank is therefore advocating the establishment of a revenue database at various municipal and district assemblies to address the current problem.
This is the second in a series of research undertaken by St. Ghana, a policy think tank about the operations, mobilization and use of public funds at the municipal and district assembly levels. Aside the numerous financial malfeasance detected in the disbursements of the District Assembly Common Fund, the research also identified inadequate access to budget documents and limited citizen participation in the development process. The research also indicated that the operations of the extractive industry were impacting negatively on the livelihood of citizens in the operational areas.
Ghana is now a middle income country, so which means that how we spend our revenue is extremely important. So we've done a pilot study which again shows that there's a lot of abuse, misuse of local revenue. Local revenue is supposed to be used to promote local development. But what we found out is that there are huge deductions that have been spent on administrative expenses that shouldn't be. People are not involved. They're not being consulted about how resources that are mobilized for local development should be used.
Chief Executive Officer of Send West Africa, Siafa Kamara, is hoping the research findings will provide a framework for government to implement policies at addressing the challenge.
Passing laws, administrative guidelines is another thing. Making sure that they take effect. So this conference is about empowering people with the knowledge that, yeah, this is what the policies say. Make sure that your assembly member does not sit there and sign a resolution empowering someone to deduct money. Make sure that your member of parliament is vigilant enough. Make sure that the minister, the people who implement projects with resources, you keep your eyes on them. So the laws are there. So something has been done. Policy changes take time. So, and that is why we keep a sustained debate.
The Omahini of the Sikado traditional area, Nana Kobna Nkitsia V, called for a bottom-up approach to the governance of the various MMDAs.
All that we've been dealing with and fighting over is really how to make sure that we have real, and when I say real, I mean it, not democracy a la Western Europe, but real participatory democracy. A kind of system of governance whereby we all collaborate, where there's a consensus, right? Where there's a collective decision on what the direction we must follow. These are some of the things that have been missing, and people have been talking about this right down from the period of Mesa Saba. The biggest problem we have, as I've been talking about, is that the communities are disempowered. It's disempowered why? Because no community in Ghana, unless you can point one to me that controls its resources.
The research finding also identified unequal access to support service by smallholder farmers and called on government to act immediately.
The Ghana Trade Union of Traders Association is asking government to, as a matter of urgency, scrap the recently introduced special import levy and the increase in VAT. According to GUTA president, the strategy adopted by government as a form of revenue generation is unjustifiable and contributes to a high cost of doing business.
President of the association, George Kweku Ofori, told journalists poor systems of operations at the port is one of the reasons why government is unable to generate enough revenue at the port, adding the introduction of the taxes will rather push local traders out of business, thereby affecting economic growth.
The recently introduced additional special tax of 2% on imports based on the CIF value. We see this increase also in the VAT rate as also not necessary. To meet government expenditure is not only unjustifiable, but also very inimical to doing business in the country because it adds to the unnecessary cost of doing business, which we have been complaining all this while, thereby weakening the financial resources of the business community, especially our working capital.
The union further made recommendations to the government and other stakeholders to address the current economic crisis facing the country.
The budgetary allocation to some of these state establishments are over-bloated. We see this as a total waste and blatant abuse of our national resources, as has been reflecting in the Auditor General's reports. It is therefore our fervent hope and belief that all public and civil servants, as well as their collaborators who are found culpable in any form of malfeasance, especially which leads to financial loss to the state, should not only be dismissed from work, but should also be prosecuted or retrieve all the lost funds, even if it means confiscating their assets and bank accounts to the state. If these areas are effectively checked, government can equally make a lot of savings of huge sums of money, which can also be deemed as a source of revenue to the state.
They, however, cautioned government to immediately heed their calls or they would advise themselves no matter the consequences.
Well, so that's it for the morning. Now, our top stories for the morning. Visiting South African President Jacob Zuma has described Ghana as a beacon of democracy on the continent.
And Minority in Parliament challenges President Mahama to ensure his appointees and top public officers pay their own utility bills instead of the 10% cut in their salary.
What do you think of that proposal by the former finance minister?
Yeah, but I think the president is trying to, the wage bill has gone up and he's trying to reduce, by 10%. So maybe they could do that plus the 10%.
Yeah, well, I feel they can do it, but it's just a minute aspect of what government spends on public officials, etc. The point is that the quantum of Ghana's revenue to GDP that is spent on the public wage bill is what we have to look at.
But his point is they should do what the president should. It shouldn't be just hear still mouth say, but they should really have it. Yeah,
I guess so. That's his own opinion. I know that he's been pushing through this very idea for the last couple of days. And that will be it for the headlines or the news we have for you as far as updates are concerned. Next, we bring them
sports.
Well, so
brought to you by Tigo.
So we're ready to do the newspapers now, and Akosha will start with the Daily Graphic.
Daily Graphic. Sale of drill ship, no value for money, says Chachu. That story is on page 3. Ghana, South Africa to promote trade, page 16. IA political parties present proposals for electoral reforms, page 9. Saying Professor Adai damns FDA over Tobinco's affair. That's on 26. And the back page of the Daily Graphic, Oil Palm Oil Growers Association acquire new office complex and prosecute supplies of condoms to serve as deterrent.
The front page of the Ghanaian Times has a story, Ghana, South Africa push for free trade union. The story on page 16 of the paper. And Chachu debunks claims drill ship sail unwarranted. According to him, the back page has some interesting sports stories. We have Kotoko Express, interest in Beninois striker. Local stars coach braces for final. Senegal-Ghana clash in WAFU final. Sumaila gets the nod. Those are the stories we have in the Ghanaian Times.
Moving on to the Chronicle. Ghana's oil sits on time bomb. Paramount Group wants government. Story on page 3. And minority drill holes in budget. So there's a picture of Dr. Akotose and the finance minister, said Tekpo. And the back page of the Chronicle reads today's UEFA Champions League matches. So the teams and time of play now.
On the front page of the paper, I seem to love looking at every morning. Daily Guide. I love just the new look of the Daily Guide. It says Chachu runs away from $40 million GNPC debt. That's how the Daily Guide decided to report yesterday's proceedings, as the former chief executive of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation appeared before the Commissioner for Judgment Debt. And teacher chased to death. And you have a picture there of the teacher supposedly chased to her death. My miracles are free. You have a picture there of Prophet 1 or Pambo. And he says his miracles are free. You don't pay any money at all. Elections now in November. So those are the stories we have on the front page of the paper, The Daily Guide.
The Daily Searchlight. Tribalism rocks police top commandant as Voltarians chase IGP. I broke the man's tooth over Mahama. Okay, up here stadium. And every Ghanaian owes 2,000 Ghana cedis as Ghana's total debt hits 49 billion Ghana cedis.
The front page of the paper, The Enquirer, has a story. Javelin takes off again as Gideon Aikwe paints a trying picture of days in the trenches to the shame of MPP. That's how the paper reported. Ghana SA signed MOUs on electricity, transport and air services. Cement manufacturers petition tariff. And Adenta MPP suspends Francis Siam for 1 year. So the story on the back, on page 4 of the paper, The Enquirer. No judgment, no debt. Sale of GMPC drill ship and payment to Societe Generale. As Chachu flattens KT and Kandapa before Judge Apo and dismisses claim that GMPC was in a bad shape by 2001.
The New Crusading Guide. Sale of GNPC drill ship. Chachu rambles and crumbles, says his computer was stolen. Story on page 3. So commissioner is to make fair assessments of evidence, says KT Yama. And then Fortis Merchant Bank deal shady. The back page of the New Crusading Guide. Chachu Mashan calling me name, says President Kufuor.
The front page of the Ghanaian Observer, what Kandapa told the Judgment Debt Commission. GRA, Yoko, National Security, others clear GC Nets, Javelin Foundation relaunch, and Professor Adai blasts FDA boss over Tobinco, says Dr. Opuni is abusing his office. We'll see how interesting that goes in the ensuing days. And we're told yesterday by the Member of Parliament for Futu that Tobinco needs to head to the court if they have any difficulty at all. The front page of the only sports paper we have this morning, Graphic Sports, has a running or a pacey Dede Ayew when he was playing. Now he is on the injured list, and so we have Dede undergoes surgery. Back page of the paper has the story as Marcel demands $1 million damage or compensation from FIFA. So we have some other stories on the front page of the Graphic Sports as well. Well, so those are how the stories have been represented on the front pages of the various newspapers.
Yes, now on AM this morning we're looking at if we need deputy ministers at all, but we take a quick break to stay on. Be right back.